First thing my brother did when he found out our father was dying was ask about the house. Not, how long does he have? Not, is he in pain? He called me at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday and said, "Have you talked to Dad about the property situation?" The property situation, that's what he called it. I'm the younger one. My name is Stella, and I spend most of my life trying not to make waves in our family. I watched my brother get the praise, the leeway, the benefit of the doubt. I watched my father hand him money for a failed restaurant, then a failed import business, then something involving storage units that I still don't fully understand. And every time, my father would say the same thing: he just needs one more chance. I never asked for chances. I put myself through nursing school while working doubles at a diner. I moved back to help my father when his health started declining. I drove him to his appointments. I organized his medications into those little plastic weekly boxes. I learned which of his doctors would actually call back and which ones you had to push. My brother visited 4 times in 2 years. I counted. So when my father's estate attorney, a quiet man named Mr. Hargrove, called me 6 weeks before my father passed and asked if we could meet privately, not at my father's house, not with any family present, I said yes without asking why. We met at a coffee shop 2 towns over. He ordered nothing. He set a folder on the table and slid it toward me without opening it. "Your father asked me to show you this," he said, "and to give you specific instructions." Inside was a document I didn't understand at first. A second will, notarized 14 months earlier, hidden, as far as my brother knew, behind the original one that split everything equally. Mr. Hargrove looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Your brother has been in contact with the office of your father's original attorney. He's been asking questions about the timeline for probate, about liquid assets, about whether a beneficiary can access the safe deposit box before the estate closes." I felt something cold move through my chest. "He can't," I said. "No," Mr. Hargrove agreed, "but the fact that he's asking suggests he intends to try, and there's something else." He tapped the folder. "Your father had reason to believe your brother may have already approached 2 of his financial accounts using a medical power of attorney that your father did not authorize." I put my hands flat on the table because they had started to shake. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Mr. Hargrove's expression didn't change. "Your father wants you to let your brother believe the second will doesn't exist. Let him proceed, and when the time comes, we'll have everything we need." "That's it?" "That's it." He paused. "Can you do that?" I thought about the 4 visits, the restaurant, the storage units, the way my brother had once told me at our mother's funeral that I shouldn't get too attached to the house because Dad's going to need options eventually. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." My father passed on a Thursday in March. I was holding his hand. My brother had sent a text earlier that day saying he was stuck in traffic, which turned out to mean he was at a lunch meeting 40 minutes from the hospital. He arrived 17 minutes after my father stopped breathing and stood in the doorway of the room looking at the bed like he was doing a quick calculation. The next 3 weeks were the worst of my life, and not just because of grief. My brother, I'll call him what I thought of him then, which was a stranger wearing my brother's face, became someone I almost didn't recognize. He was at my father's house going through drawers before the obituary was even published. He asked me twice about a specific safe deposit box key that he claimed our father had mentioned to him. He started CCing me on emails to Mr. Hargrove's office with subject lines like estate timeline and asset inventory request, things no one had authorized him to initiate. He also started being very, very kind to me, which should have felt good. Instead, it made my skin crawl. He called more than he had in years. He asked how I was holding up. He suggested we have dinner, just the 2 of us, to talk through everything. At dinner, he was warm and nostalgic. He talked about our childhood. He said things like, "Dad would have wanted us to handle this together, and you've been carrying so much. Let me take some of this off your plate." And then, at the end of the meal, he set a manila envelope on the table. "I had something drawn up," he said. "Nothing complicated, just a mutual agreement that we split the estate management duties. You handle the medical bills and personal effects. I handle the financial accounts and property decisions." I looked at the envelope. I thought about what Mr. Hargrove had told me. Let him proceed. "Can I take this home and read it tonight?" I asked. He smiled. "Of course, take your time." I did not take it home and read it. I took it directly to Mr. Hargrove's office the next morning. He read it in 4 minutes. Then he set it down and said this would have given him signatory authority over the estate's primary holding account. I know. If he had signed it, he could have transferred funds before probate closed. I know. Mr. Hargrove looked at me for a moment. You didn't sign it? No. Good. He leaned back. I think we're ready. The official will reading was scheduled for a Friday afternoon at Mr. Hargrove's office. My brother arrived in a suit I hadn't seen before, which told me everything I needed to know about how he thought this was going to go. He had driven himself. He had left his wife at home. He walked in like a man who already knew the outcome and was just there to collect. We sat across from each other at a long table. Mr. Hargrove read the original will first. It was exactly what my brother expected. Equal split. The house, the retirement accounts, the personal property, all divided 50-50. I watched my brother's shoulders relax. I watched him uncross his arms. I watched him breathe out. Then Mr. Hargrove set the first document aside and placed the second one on the table. There is a subsequent instrument, he said, in that same flat professional voice, executed 14 months ago. In the event that this document is valid and controlling, which it is, it supersedes the prior will in its entirety. My brother went very still. Mr. Hargrove read it without looking up. Our father had left the house and all physical property to me outright. The retirement accounts and liquid assets were to be held in a trust, administered by Mr. Hargrove's firm, with distributions at their discretion based on documented need. My brother was named as a potential beneficiary of that trust, but with one condition attached. Any attempt to access, transfer, contest, or interfere with estate assets prior to or during probate would result in automatic disinheritance from the trust entirely. There was a beat of silence so complete I could hear the air conditioning. Then my brother said, "That's not real." Mr. Hargrove looked up. "I assure you it is. It's been on file with this office for 14 months and with the county probate court since your father's passing. He would have told me. He chose not to." She, my brother pointed at me, and his voice had gone somewhere ugly. She manipulated him. He was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. Mr. Hargrove set down the document. Your father was evaluated by 2 independent physicians at the time of signing, as is standard in cases like this. Both found him fully competent. That documentation is also on file. My brother stood up. He wasn't loud. That surprised me. He just stood up, straightened his jacket, and said, "I want to contest this." "That's your right," Mr. Hargrove said. "You should know that your father anticipated that possibility. There is a third document." My brother sat back down. From a separate folder, Mr. Hargrove produced a packet that he slid across the table. I watched my brother's face as he read it. The color left him slowly, like something draining. It was a detailed log, compiled by Mr. Hargrove's office and a private financial firm my father had quietly retained 8 months before he died. It documented every inquiry my brother had made to the original estate attorney's office. It included records from 2 of my father's financial institutions, showing login attempts from an IP address registered to my brother's home, made during the period covered by the unauthorized power of attorney. It included a notarized statement from my father himself, written in his own hand, describing a conversation in which my brother had asked him to sign paperwork my father did not understand, on a day when my father was on new medication that made him foggy. My father had written, "I pretended to agree and then did not sign. I called Mr. Hargrove the next day." My brother set the packet down on the table. He stared at the wall. "If you contest the will," Mr. Hargrove said, "this documentation will be submitted to the court. At that point, it is no longer a civil estate matter. Your father chose not to involve law enforcement while he was alive. That decision does not bind his estate." The room was very quiet. I had imagined this moment so many times in the 3 weeks since my father died. I had imagined feeling triumphant, or vindicated, or furious. Instead, I just felt tired, and sad, and clear. I looked at my brother across the table, and I said the thing I had been carrying since that Tuesday morning phone call, the one about the property situation. "He knew," I said. "He saw what you were doing, and he spent the last year of his life making sure you couldn't. While he was dying, he was protecting me. That's what he was doing." My brother didn't say anything. "I'm not taking anything from you," I said. "You never had it to begin with. Dad just made sure I finally knew that." He left without signing anything, without shaking anyone's hand, without looking at me. What came after wasn't clean. I want to be honest about that, because the part people don't tell you is that winning something doesn't make it stop hurting. My brother called 3 more times in the following 2 weeks. The first call was angry. He said I had poisoned our father against him, that I had used his illness to get close to him and isolate him, that I was a manipulative person who had always played the victim. I let him say all of it. When he stopped, I said, "I love you. I'm not going to talk to you right now," and I hung up. The second call was from his wife, who I had always liked, which made it worse. She said he was devastated, that he hadn't been sleeping, that maybe there was a way to find some middle ground. I told her gently that the will was the will, that I hadn't written it, and that if her husband wanted to repair anything, he knew where to find me. She didn't call back. The third call was just silence on the other end for almost a minute, and then he said very quietly, "I thought he loved me more than that." And that one cracked something open in me that I wasn't ready for, because I didn't think it was about love. I think he had spent so long being given things, money, chances, leniency, that he had confused receiving with being loved. And when the receiving stopped, when the ledger finally balanced, it felt to him like rejection, like proof he was never the favorite. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know. I don't know what my father felt. I only know what he did. I did not call my brother back. 3 months later, Mr. Hargrove called me into his office again. He had a small envelope, letter-sized, with my name on it in my father's handwriting. He told me my father had left it with instructions to give it to me after everything was settled. I sat in the parking lot of his office building for a long time before I opened it. Inside was a single folded page and a photograph. The photograph was of me and my father at my nursing school graduation 11 years ago. I'm in my cap and gown. He has his arm around me and he's looking at the camera, but I'm looking at him. I hadn't seen that photo before. I don't know who took it. The letter was short. I'm not going to quote all of it because some things are only for me. But the last 2 lines were, "I should have protected you sooner. I want you to know I saw you even when I let you down. The house is yours. Make it something that feels like yours." I sat in that parking lot for a while. Then I drove home, to the house where I grew up, and I walked through every room, and I touched the walls, and I thought about my father sitting across from Mr. Joe Hargrove and making a decision and keeping it quiet for over a year, not telling me, not asking me to carry it with him, just working on it steadily, the way he used to do everything. I thought about the Tuesday morning phone call, the property situation, how certain my brother had been that everything would go the way he planned it. I thought about how my father had been 3 steps ahead of him the entire time. People ask me if I regret not confronting my brother sooner, not pushing back harder, not making my father see, while he was still alive, what was happening. I think about that a lot. What I keep coming back to is this. My father didn't need me to tell him. He already knew. He knew longer than I did. He just needed time to do something about it in the way that was right for him. Quietly, legally, without drama, without giving my brother the chance to fight back in real time. That's the thing about people who spend their whole lives being underestimated. We learn to wait. My brother called one more time, about 6 months after the will reading. Not angry, not sad, just quiet. He said he had been in therapy, that he was starting to understand some things about himself. He didn't ask me for anything. He just said he was sorry for the phone call when our father was in the hospital, the one about the property situation. It was the most honest thing he had said to me in years. I told him I appreciated him calling. I told him I wasn't ready to have a real conversation, but that I wasn't closing the door. I don't know what happens next between us. I genuinely don't. What I know is that the house is paid off, and it's mine, and last spring I repainted the kitchen the color I always wanted it to be. A deep warm green that my brother always said was too dark, and my father never had an opinion about. And that I love every single morning when I come downstairs to make coffee. My father built something before he left. He built it quietly and carefully, and he made sure I didn't have to fight for it alone. I don't think I'll ever stop being grateful that he trusted me enough to wait. I keep thinking about the photograph Mr. Hargrove handed me, the one taken at my nursing school graduation that I had never seen before, me looking up at my father while he looked at the camera. Someone caught that moment without either of us knowing. And what it shows is something I couldn't have put into words until now. I was always looking at him, hoping to be seen. And somewhere in there, without me realizing it, he was. The hardest thing about this story isn't my brother. It's the years before any of this happened, when I told myself that the way things were was just how families worked. That some people get more and some people get less, and you learn to be okay with it. I drove my father to his appointments and I organized his medications, and I didn't ask for acknowledgement because I had stopped expecting it. I thought that was strength. Looking back, I think part of it was just exhaustion dressed up as acceptance. What my father did, quietly, methodically, over the last year of his life, required something I've had to sit with for a long time. It required him to be honest with himself about what he had let happen. That's not easy for a parent. Admitting that you gave one child more runway than they deserved, more grace than was fair, more chances that cost someone else something, that takes a kind of moral clarity that doesn't come without cost. He had to look at the whole picture, not just the parts that were comfortable. And then he had to act on what he saw, even knowing it would create a rupture he wouldn't live to help repair. That's the thing I come back to. He didn't just leave me the house, he left me documentation, a plan, a second will, a financial investigator, 2 physician evaluations, a notarized statement in his own handwriting. He thought it through. He was methodical. He was in the last months of his life when he had every reason to just let things unfold, sharper and more deliberate than I had ever given him credit for. I used to think patience was something you endured, something that happened to you while you waited for life to move. But watching what my father built in secret, I understand it differently now. Patience paired with clear thinking is a different thing entirely. It's not passive. It's the slowly most deliberate form of action there is. My brother had speed. He had confidence. He had a suit for the will reading. What he didn't have was the discipline to think past his own assumptions, to consider that the people he underestimated had been watching just as carefully as he had. I painted the kitchen green. I make coffee every morning in the house my father left me, and I think about Stella, about the version of me that drove to that coffee shop not knowing what Mr. Hargrove was going to say, terrified and exhausted and still willing to show up. That person didn't know she was capable of holding a secret for 3 weeks while her brother brought her dinner and slid envelopes across the table. She didn't know she had it in her. But she did, and that's the part I want to remember. Not the winning, the showing up quietly and trusting that it was enough.